Kate's career journey started in film production, which took her from New York to LA, but she says she was underwhelmed by celebrities, so she enrolled in the Cordon Bleu, and her culinary pursuits eventually brought her to Charleston. This woman is a creative force in the kitchen, and over the years I've watched her bring that creativity to every other area of her life. She has found ways to combine her passions and talents in new ways as she evolves. And in 2023, she again found a way to combine her love of cooking and storytelling with the launch of her boutique cookbook publishing company, Decent Plus. And somewhere in there, amongst raising a toddler and trying to save her marriage, she decided to go back to school to get her master's in creative writing at Vermont College of Fine Arts. And I really admire Kate's commitment to her writing practice. For at least a year now, she's been writing consistently on her Substack and just sharing really vulnerably about her journey through motherhood and divorce and trying to rediscover her joy for cooking as a single mom and sharing really sweet stories about her latest endeavor as a substitute teacher. And in one of her pieces, she writes, "What continues to amaze me with writing is that whatever I'm wrestling with internally, whether I'm conscious of it or not, always appears in the writing." And this revelation really echoes through her latest project, which is this beautiful literary magazine featuring all female artists. In the intro, she's writing about selling the house that she and her husband bought, kind of as a last-ditch effort to save the relationship. And so she's thinking about home and what it means. This revisits a question I've been stumbling over for the last few years. What is home? Is it a creation outside of us, a dwelling within us, or a longing for a feeling of the past? Why do we anchor ourselves in one geographical location versus another? Why do certain environments, such as plucked mud and low country grasses, calm me, while arid desert landscapes feel like a living death? For me, home is by a body of water. For others, they prefer mountainous regions. How does this come to be? What does home even mean? Revisionist was born out of this search for self, this search for home. So Kate's going to talk about this journey home and how stories have become her map. That was beautiful. Thank you. Okay, I know we're supposed to do this more off the cuff, but I'm a writer, so I'm going to stick a little bit more to my words. I apologize if any white flour on me. Today was the 100th day of school, and my 7-year-old needed to look like my 7-year-old needed to look like a 7-year-old. So we went out this morning on the back porch putting flour in his hair. So good news that one day I shower. In many ways, I really don't feel qualified to be up here today. I am very much in the bud-stoop phase in my life, which is a Martha Beck term about when one is in the regrowth or transformation phase, like the caterpillar in the chrysalis that turns into mush before the butterfly. At least God hope and God willing I'll get to the butterfly, but everything in my life right now is starting from scratch. Literally. 3 weeks ago, I finalized my divorce after a 9-year marriage. I just moved into a new home with my 7-year-old son. I'm restarting my career as a writer to try and write my own stories and not just those of clients for the restaurants and media. And I'm substitute teaching. I'll be there this afternoon with 4th graders to try and make ends meet and be on a schedule with my son as a single mom. And I just launched this fledgling magazine, which brought me here today, which is a literary magazine featuring female writers, artists, and culinarians. The magazine is aptly named after a Margaret Atwood quote, which really sums up my life right now. It's called, "We were all revisionists, and what we're revising is ourselves." And yet, despite all this, I will tell you in the utmost sincerity
I can confirm I would not be here today without the creative act of writing and storytelling. We tell ourselves stories every day. The stories we tell ourselves internally, in the mirror, the stories we tell ourselves to friends, externally, as we're catching up in the day. Stories are simply how we interpret the world and how we try to really get through and come together. Today I'm going to take you on my personal journey, illustrating where storytelling and writing stories helped me to find my voice and heal, and which in turn has led me to here in front of you all. When COVID hit in March of 2020, my world, like most people's, really turned upside down. The cookbook I was currently working on for Shane New was waylaid. The PR boutique company that I was working with a close friend shuttered, and I went back to being a full-time mom, which I do love, but it is really difficult when you don't have the support of community and family during a time like COVID. While most women and wives and mothers took to primal screams when their rage reached full capacity, somehow I navigated my way back to the page. And this was the exact moment when I realized I had full recognition I had lost myself as a person within my marriage and within early motherhood, and I was determined to find her again. And upside to COVID was the proliferation of online writing classes, and I was fortunate to be able to take some of those, which led me to BCFA, College of Fine Arts in Montpelier, for a low residency writing program, which I never even knew these things existed. I also started trying to research the publishing industry at that time, which I will come back to later in the talk. When I arrived at BCFA in 2022, the week the dog's decision was handed down, I blurted to a woman next to me that I had yet to meet, this writing program will either strengthen or end my marriage. This was the first time in over 8 years that I had been away from my husband for more than a weekend, and I almost didn't attend because I was terrified of leaving my young son, as I was the primary caretaker. The program was about 10 days, so that's a really long time. To give you kind of a mental snapshot of my state at that time, I spent most of my time in my room writing outside of class, as social interactions were incredibly anxiety-producing for me at that time, and I really struggled to believe that I was worthy to be there as a writer. Also, I could barely go a few hours without tearing up, as I was missing my son so. As one friend told me later, every time I saw you, I could see and feel the sadness all over your face. However, this was the first time I had a room of my own, where from the moment I woke to the moment I went to sleep, I could determine exactly what I wanted to do. I could simply tend to my own needs first. I know that sounds revolutionary, but it's true. Another thing about a residency is I didn't have to think about groceries or laundry or food or bathrooms or any of the things that the laundry list of the day-to-day that clog up our mind and make it hard to be creative. One of the first women I befriended during this time at BCFA was a woman named Amy Kalini. The bravery she exhibited in sharing her story about leaving an abusive husband inspired me to start to explore my own story truthfully. When Amy read this piece to the school upon her graduation, a piece that almost won an International Literary Prize for nonfiction essays, my first thought was, I want to publish that so everyone can read and share her story. Here is an excerpt from the beginning of A Caught Bird, about how Amy wanted to defend a bluebird's nest from predators, and in turn, defend herself and her boys from an abusive marriage. A Caught Bird. I began by trapping and killing the house sparrows the same month my marriage dies. May is encapped by two events, Mother's Day and Memorial Day weekend, each fateful for the birds, but also for me. On a southern Sunday, when our plans are thwarted by downpours, my husband carries a cedar bluebird nest box to the front yard in the driving rain. Because the ground is waterlogged, the pole sinks into the soil. I watch him through the living room window and think how kind he is, how thoughtful, because he's only doing this for me. He doesn't care about birds. 2 weeks later, the same man will slam me into a wall during one argument and kick me during another. He has never been violent before, not once in our 10 years of marriage. But after the shock of these events wears off, I draw a taut, unbroken line stretching back to our beginning. Gifted with the abrupt clarity that only trauma can elicit, it suddenly feels obvious that our marriage was always going to come to this. Only a month before my husband hurts me, I stand in front of the backyard and watch house sparrows attack and drive out a pair of nesting eastern bluebirds from our neighbor's nest box. Those bluebirds were lucky. They lost their eggs but escaped with their lives. Watching this unfold compels me to put up my own nest box, something I've always wanted to do but have avoided because I know that if I want to protect bluebirds, I will have to control house sparrows. And control is a euphemism for catch and kill. A month after I returned home from school that summer, I asked for a separation. Instead, we started intense therapy for the second time. 6 months later, I returned back to school in January amidst snowy and icy conditions with a broken ankle and in a very dark place emotionally. Enrolled in a transcendence and writing workshop, I read one of my classmates' Bennett's pieces on my way to school to prepare for the workshop, and I found myself bowled over in much needed laughter from her dark humor. I was blown away by her astute voice, and I wanted to publish this too. She almost also won literary awards for this piece. And just a side note, for the literary industry, once you are published in any type of journal, that forbids you from actually being able to accept any of the awards or be published in other journals. So knowing that, the fact that these women trusted me with their work still humbles me to this day. So here is the opening from the excerpt from Burn by Bennett Goldschmidt Sauer about friendship as a coveted home. There was a time we caught the end of a documentary one winter night when we had come in late and we were still too wound up to go to sleep. It was about quadriplegics being taken spelunking on stretchers for the experience. We looked at each other in disbelief and then horror over our juice glasses of Bushnells. The stretchers were being carried by volunteers wearing headlamps, which on the grainy film were just pricks of light in the sculpted dark. We could hear the shuffling of our feet against the uneven ground, and every once in a while a grunt as the stretcher was lifted over an unseen impediment, and a monotonous voiceover explaining what was happening, as if we couldn't tell for ourselves. Your eyebrows arched as high as I'd ever seen them, and I felt your toes, which you pushed under my thighs for warmth, curl. Then we burst out laughing, and laughed until we were gasping for breath. When you finally stopped, you announced, breathing hard, that we were both going to burn in hell. I pointed out that it had already been well established. All that the people in the stretchers, the poor bastards, you said, tears streaking your cheeks in the wan light of the TV, could see was the top of the cavern, probably seething with upside-down bats or weird blind creatures, albino centipedes, you said in your tirade. And then only in the beam of the headlights were the guides, looking straight up. The drip, drip, drip of moisture on the patient faces. They were probably scared shitless. People are so fucking senseless, you said the next morning when we were sober. Why would they do that? If you were trapped in your body, would you want to be taken down into a cave? If that ever happened to me, would you fucking think I'd enjoy it for the experience? Your mouth twisted in disgust. Just take me to the dark room so I can die smelling the chemicals. The irony of that is not lost on me now, as your eyesight was one of the last things to go. So that at the very end, every room was dark, was a cavern filled with the hissing and squeaking of the machinery that monitored your descent. 6 months later, I was back to my third of 5 residencies, this time with a broken right hand and a second request to my husband to separate. I realized as I was practicing this speech that it implies that my husband was abusive, and that is not the case at all. I'm just a klutz. During this residency, I became close to friend Jessica Cuello, a published poet with 4 books. I really encourage you to look them up: Liars, Yours, Creature, and Hunt. At school, she too was learning to use her voice, and we began to confide in each other and share work. Here's one of her poems in the magazine that reflects memories of childhood residences and the figures therein, published in her poetry collection entitled Liars. To loneliness. You're a room with no doors, the innermost white ash of the fire, a wool coat with X's sewn on the inside. You are a liar. We lie side by side. You shake the ceiling face, sing from the iron vent, whisper to the one-armed boy. When the child wakes in the empty house, you are waiting. They say you live in fields of snow, but you hate darkness. I breathe your cold skin. You are a gravestone, a nursery rhyme in the body. The old man who played one, who played knick-knack on my thumb. When the nurse's tender fingers touch your neck, you cry. Your nerves are pale strikes of lightning across the silent lake. We touch with just eyes. You read to yourself, to rid yourself of invisibility, and at night, become a lone toll booth worker, hunched with fluorescent desire. When I met Meg at the fourth residency, I was debating whether I had to start antidepressants again, even though I struggled to integrate them healthfully into my body. And I do am full support of anybody with medications that needs to take them for mental health. For the first time, I understood intimately the thin veil between madness and sanity. And if I continued on my present course and stayed married, I could see myself losing my mind. As Kate Hamilton writes in her amazing memoir, Mad Wife, once upon a time, a woman who freed herself from patriarchy had to be dead, mad, or monstrous. It was at this time that Meg shared an extremely intimate story about having a psychotic break and being put into a mental home. The genius of Meg is that she remembers with such clarity every moment of her break with reality and writes about it with stunning precision. Here's an excerpt from her piece, A Different Kind of Home. Later, I cried so hard that a nurse told me she was going to give me a sedative. I hyperventilated as she pushed the needle into my vein. There was something bad in this fight. As I drifted into sleep, icy silver waters threatened to engulf me. I heard my grandmother's voice, "Jump, Magid!" I leaped clear of the deadly silver liquid before it could touch me. "Grandmère," I called, but there was no answer. I woke to the hard mattress, the thin sheets, the multiple locked doors between me and freedom. But I was triumphant. I will not die. I will live. I lay awake on the cot with this knowledge welling up inside me. There was something inside me nothing can touch. My grandmère was protecting me. I pondered the name she gave me in my dream, Magid. Always family members had called me Maggie, Meg, and Margaret. What was this Magid? Isn't that a man's name? Was it just my imagination, or are my muscles becoming more defined, my voice deepening? Now, at Christmas Eve service, I hold my true identity within me like a talisman. Magid, French prince, grandson to a queen, ballet dancer, extraordinaire, spy. My final residency was past July 2024. I arrived at school having been separated from my ex for 10 months, working towards divorce and finding myself much more confident in my voice. Having just moved out of our Charleston home and having to live with my parents, I waited for our new home to be ready. I felt unmoored physically, and am still very much in the muck of it, trying to find my way forward while still staying true to myself. I felt like more than ever, I wanted to show that even amidst the rubble of my life, I could still create and champion the voices of the other talented female writers I so admired that had led me along this arduous path. At this time, I also found myself frustrated with the submissions process for literary journals, most of which are run by male editorial boards and were not interested in stories such as mine about motherhood, the effects of patriarchy, and divorce. But what if my brilliant designer Scott Long and I could provide a different platform? What if we could create a different type of experience that highlighted only female artists and did include a costly submission process? Literary journals often supplement their printing costs and income by making writers pay to have their pieces read. Furthermore, I found that most of the literary journals I read were incredibly dense, and even though I wanted to read the work, journals often went untouched. This too awakened a desire to create a reading experience that was more palatable to all the senses. We decided to move forward with the creation of a magazine, which in hindsight was probably a little rash, definitely rash, but here we are. I reached out to the writers I always wanted to publish, and to my astonishment, they agreed. And just like that, Revisionist was born. I had no idea what I was doing, but we were moving forward. In light of my immediate quest for a home and for the metaphorical new home I was searching for in society and wanted to create, I decided to have a magazine centered around that theme and remarkably all the pieces worked. It also felt important as a boutique culinary publishing company to highlight the stories of clients we were currently working with, which is why Greer from Harkin and Harbinger and Levy are included with their beautiful stories and recipes as well. The process of publishing revisions allowed me to stay focused on writing, to stay energized and in conversation in a community of artists, compromise the issue, and most importantly, to continue to create in a time of of greater people and vulnerability, not only for me, but for most of the people in our world today. To tell the stories that needed to be told, to seek the home that would hold us all. Scott Long, my brilliant graphic designer, and I both believe that everyone should make money on their own art, which is very unusual about our magazine, is that we paid the writers each $500 and they can make the profit with selling the magazine at $10 an issue. We also print previously published work, and artists retain the right to their publishing. They retain their publishing rights, meaning they can go and still submit this piece and keep it up on their own websites or Substacks, things that you're not allowed to do for a lot of other entities. During this time, we were also focused on producing a magazine we naively neglected to figure out how to sell the magazine. It didn't help that it came out right after the election results, and everyone, rightfully so, went into hibernation to save themselves. We neglected to market it and figured out our own distribution model. We simply thought that wherever the magazine was, people would buy it, forgetting we needed to tell them what the magazine was and why they needed to buy it. That's simple marketing 101. I share all this to remind myself that you don't need to know everything or have a completed plan in place in order to keep moving forward with the project. I believe that we will find a creative solution to bring the community together around the magazine, and that quite possibly that solution lies in this room today. We are also in talks with the Charleston Literary Festival, who is going to become a sponsor of the magazine, and hosting selected short story readings, as our goal is to bring more community together around bring the words to life in live audiences. So stay tuned for that, and if you have any other great ideas, please be in touch. As we were going to print, a writer dropped out last minute because she wanted more time to edit her piece, and I thought, of course, I gave that to her, but I also thought we can't go to print with just 3 stories. Luckily, Jessica introduced me to a writer and co-worker that she knew, Sarah Katowski, who happened to be working on an essay about various homes she lived in during her 20s that helped shape and evolve her emotional growth as a woman. Here's an excerpt from Sarah's piece entitled Home Body. With each new place, we revise who we are. And then, right before Christmas, my friendship and union and love with A suddenly broke. That is, it felt sudden, although really a marriage breaks down much like a home does, day by day, small neglect after small neglect, until one day you look up at the ceiling in your kitchen and see the grease stains. You take a shower and notice the mold in the grout. You remove a book from the shelf and realize how much dust is tattooed into its stitched spine. In each of these beautiful excerpts, as we're listening, we're momentarily suspended into another world, outside of this time, outside of this place that we're in now. This is what creativity can do for us, why it's so vital. Because as we enter into the creative mindset, we leave the logical, fear-based, anxious part of our brains and go into a more serene, peaceful state. As I worked to promote the words of these incredible female artists in the magazine, I too became more confident in my own voice, in sharing my own story. Because every person's words matter. Your story matters. Just as songs are meant to be sung, words are meant to be spoken, art is meant to be shared, food is meant to be, art is meant to be witnessed, and food is meant to be shared. All of these things are creative acts. All of these things illustrate a bit about you and weave your story into the larger tapestry of human life. To share your story is to maintain your selfhood, and by doing so, resist the patriarchal, racist, sexist, homophobic, capitalistic, homogenous ideas being shouted at us in society every day.
Yes.
I say all this, it's just a small parting piece of advice. No matter what happens in the next few months, in the next few years, just keep going, keep writing, keep reading, keep painting, keep cooking, keep creating in whatever way or ways speaks to you, even if it's just a little bit at a time. Even if it means on some days, all you can do is close your eyes and dream, then dream. Thank you.